There we go. We're live.
Thank you so much. All set, Scott, when you are.
All right. I'm just see if my browser will. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and I just want to have it be an open forum. I would love to hear from parents just how things are going, what's working well, what could work better, and just we'll sort of go from there and have it be a back and forth conversation.
Everybody, I believe, is on mute. So if there's something you'd like to say, just remember to unmute yourselves. The system is designed to mute you upon entry.
Scott, it's Rebecca Metters. How are you?
Good, Rebecca. How are you?
Good. Question, is any of the, sorry, I'm in my car, but is any of the pickup or drop off procedures at the middle school going to get a little easier? I know there's always this huge backup on Kroll Road and I know that there's police officers. I'm just wondering if it's just going to get a little easier.
I don't know. I think I hope that it will start to get to stream a little better. All I know is, I think when my office, I park behind the middle school, so at times I end up getting caught in the traffic coming in to drop kids off, and at least my experiences coming from the center of town direction up Kroll Road, right about the time that the school buses are starting to unload and that a lot of parents are dropping off, is that it's been better this week than last week. But I think I don't know how much better it'll get, given that at the end of the day, we're still going to have a whole lot of parents that are going to be coming up and dropping off.
I don't know if it's so much the after. I just know, I know they don't open the doors till 8:45. So if you don't want to be stuck sitting on Kroll Road, you need to pretty much get to the middle school before 8:30 in the morning, or else you're backing up all the like today we were running late. So I was sitting on Kroll Road. I know there was a guy behind me who had nothing to do with the middle school and was kind of banging his hands on the steering wheel, I think pissed because I couldn't move out of the way. So I just didn't know if, I don't know. The elementary and the high school has been great with the pickup and the drop off. It just seems to be the middle school just has so much congestion in the pickup and the drop off and stuff. And sometimes I've even told Dylan to walk down the street to the bakery because I just don't want to deal with, that line sometimes. So just was curious if there was any way to streamline it or something.
So I haven't been up at Chatham Elementary. Is elementary on hitching post? Is the backup reasonable?
It seems like that, it normally does, every year. I haven't noticed it being really anything different. And then in the morning, the elementary school seems to be. It doesn't seem any different than last year, at least to me. It seems great. Seems fine.
Yeah. I know that at least the last few days that I've come in, coming from the south, I guess it would be, going up to the middle school in the morning, hasn't been backed up, but definitely I'm seeing the police officer on the north side with a lot of traffic coming that direction.
Yeah, no, for me, the elementary, like I just said, I've noticed the mornings, I either need to leave my house at 8:15 and sit for 20 minutes in the middle school before I can let Dylan out of the car, or like I said, I get stuck on Kroll Road. But I know that's not anything. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'll have to talk with Principal O'Shea and maybe in touch base with Bill Massey on whether we think we might need to find some way to balance, which direction people are coming.
Okay. No, that was just I just had a question about it.
Yeah. And Mary, how's the drop off been going and pick up at Harwich Elementary?
So it's we planned on opening a second entrance from the far side of the building. So we have 2 lines for both drop off and pickup, and it's definitely took, a few days to get things moving along, but our doors open at 8:35. All the doors are clear, all the buses are unloaded by 8:50. And all of our students are in their cars or on their buses and on their way home by 2:20. We do have to start pickup quite a bit earlier just because of the sheer volume of cars, but it's flowing quickly. But same thing, we have people getting ready to pick up their children as early as 1:20, 1:30, and they just wait. But we're lucky to have more of a driveway, I think, than coming off of Sisson and coming in off of Parallel than the middle school has. So it definitely pulls the traffic off of Sisson. However, there is a backup on Parallel, but it's not a main drag like Crowell Road.
I mean, behind, just for, so that people understand, behind this is that this year, because of COVID, we had to ask parents, if at all possible, to drive, just to pull enough students off of our buses so that the families that really need to use the buses are able to have some spacing between students on the buses that the state's requiring. So I really appreciate all the parents who sort of stepped up to make this possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to go and have the buses even function with all the students that normally are on them. So it sort of created, we've solved one problem with the parents supporting us by pulling students off buses and managed to have us manage to get the buses filled with the only 23, I think, students on them at most. But then, of course, we are struggling with some lines where it comes to drop off and pick up. How about other questions or things that people want to know about?
Scott, it's Bill Massey. I can take a minute to address Rebecca's question really quick, maybe.
Sure.
So I think in the grand scheme of things, the middle school as a campus was never designed to, it was never built to take the amount of traffic that it sees. And that was even pre-COVID, which is why even before there was such a need to expand the number of people driving their kids to and from school every day, it was necessary for us to make some logistical changes with busing and everything. So I think, the admin and I and the police department, we're doing as much as we can to alleviate that traffic tie-up. And slowly but surely, I think a lot of the motoring traffic is getting into a pretty good groove. Some days it works better than others. Other days, the wheels come off. And, I look at it now, we're having terrific weather. When the snow comes, I just am nervous that it's going to be a little bit more tricky. But we are looking at that just about every couple of days. We reevaluate how we do things. But we're not blind to the fact that it is a serious tie-up on Crowell Road sometimes, which is also a pretty main thoroughfare for people going to and coming from work in Chatham, whereas, the high school is pretty set off from kind of a side street, and the elementary school as well has a couple of extra entrances. So we're doing all we can, and we're going to continue to work on it. So I hope that helps.
Bill, and I think what you're doing there as our school resource officer, and also just having some extra support from the Chatham Police in the morning to guide the traffic around. So thank you on that.
Well, thanks. I signed in as a parent tonight, so now I'll take off my police hat and put my dad hat back on.
I just have a quick question. I don't know that this is the venue to be offering suggestions or ideas, but is there going to be a chance to, because I have a couple ideas that might help with alleviating some of this.
Sure.
So my son goes to Harwich Elementary and my daughter goes to the Monomoy Middle School, and there's a 45-minute time difference, almost an hour time difference. I mean, if there's any parents, I'm willing to pick up my daughter early. I just don't know if that messes up the school day or anything, but if there was like a 2 different time pickup zone. I mean, I don't know how that would even be possible to the teachers if interrupting the day, but that might alleviate half that traffic, especially in the winter time, even if it's only for a few months.
I think the kids have they have a schedule that they're following, so it would be truncating a class to have a second go around. I'm hopeful that by the time we get into the colder months, we'll have a groove going at the middle school that's going to make it a little bit smoother.
Hi, this is Jennifer Wright. I have a question.
Sure, Jennifer.
I know me and a couple other kids with parents with kids on IEPs have been emailed a schedule and said this is your upcoming schedule, and it's just blank. And they said that they'd get back to me with when that's going to kind of resume. So I'm just wondering if there's a timeline for that, and if the issue is a staffing issue or is it space?
Is your student in the in-person or distance learning?
In person.
It shouldn't be a staffing issue. I think we have all of our special educators hired. It may have just been a scheduling issue. I think you could reach out to each school has a team chair that sort of oversees special education services in that building. And I suspect that the team chair could work with you in resolving what that scheduling should be.
Can I jump in and answer?
Sure, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. So what happens typically in the first 2 weeks of school, the schedules are being developed because we have all the related service providers that need to fit in students into groups and, of course, across the different grade levels. So we initially sent out a service plan, a special education service plan, or a special education remote service plan that had the preliminary grid services that each student would be receiving, especially with changes that might occur. So for example, a student might receive their math, which used to be in a pullout setting within the general education classroom. And so as they're looking to schedule students, whether they're receiving that within the classroom or without or out of the classroom, they're really trying to make sure that everything is covered. So I had asked them to send out the service plans with a note saying that the schedule will be developed in the next 2 weeks so that we can make sure we weren't sending out multiple plans as we were changing. Teachers have been emailing me this week saying this schedule isn't working. I want to speak to the parent and say, can we shift it to this schedule instead? So we're really trying to make sure we're covering all of the services, but you should have your plans and your schedule by the end of this week.
All right, thank you.
And I would say if people are willing or are welcome to just chime in, you could also go and drop questions that you have into the chat box, and we'll get to them if you don't want to go turn your mic on.
Hi, my name is Bree, and I have a child at the middle school. I have a question about cell phone use.
Sure.
My understanding was that in the elementary and middle schools here, there's a no cell phone policy, or it must remain in backpacks. I thought it was no cell phone, but I respect that some parents do have their younger, even their fifth graders with phones at school. My daughter's been saying that they're out and kids are playing Minecraft and other games on phones. Can that be quickly addressed and stopped?
So
Here, Scott, do you want me to answer that?
is Adam or anybody from the middle school on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me. All right, I just got back from a run. No judging. So the cell phone policy hasn't changed at all since last year. As far as what the expectation is, students can have them on them as they come in the morning to like listen to music on the bus. They're not allowed to like take pictures or do anything like that. They're allowed to use them up until they come into the room in the morning, and then they're asked to power down and put them away, either in their backpack or in the mobile computer cart. And then at the end of the day, they're allowed to access them again to check for messages or to contact home if they need to. Beyond that, if there's a specific reason, there's been some instances where they've been allowed by the specific teacher, and that would be educationally related. For science, for example, they've taken pictures and then uploaded them. But beyond that, they shouldn't be using them. And that's the first I've heard of it being used outside of the educational context, or when just from anybody, from students or from staff or from parents. Sorry, does that answer everything, Bree?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. It must be during those times then that this is happening, and that's obviously within parameters set, and that's obviously I respect that. That's what I said. I just didn't understand all the sort of rules underlying this. I had a question that was sort of related in the past, and I won't go into it now, but it had to do with my a non-screen device walkie-talkie that was on a GPS system that wasn't allowed in the school. And so I'll address that with you at a different time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I see in the chat, somebody has asked, is there a plan on updating software for the Chromebooks? And I think the answer is yes. The Chromebooks, I think every time they're used in the building, have the capacity to have things updated on them. I'll have to have Jim Birchfield, our tech director, go provide me some more information on this. I also think that my understanding, we are having a little bit of a glitch with a few of the Chromebooks. We have, I think, got some Chromebooks that came for distribution sort of late in the game here, and I think there are some software glitches on some of the Chromebooks that I know that our techs are currently working on for the ones that were more newly distributed.
Scott, I had a conversation.
Sorry, Mark.
Oh, it's okay. I can add a little, I had a conversation with Jim. I can just add a little context. Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum, for everybody who doesn't know. So from the new batch, it's actually a hardware issue, but Google is working on a software fix. The last conversation I had with Jim was earlier today, and supposedly Google is close to releasing the patch to fix the problem. Part of it's waiting for Google. I mean, they work quickly, but I know they're it's in process, but it should be done and pushed out quickly. And part of the benefit of the Chromebooks is we can push updates out to the machines.
Amy, did you have something to say?
I was just going to add the same. I had reached out to the tech department today just because of those issues. It seems to be specific to 5th grade because those are newer.
Okay.
And I echo the same that Mark stated, that they're going to be sending out, they're going to be pushing something out. It will require some steps. So I'm going to do my best to work with the families through that. But I appreciate it being presented to the families because I've had to field a lot of questions that I can't really answer sometimes when it comes to the tech. So I appreciate that being put out just to families, that it is something that's coming. I don't want anyone going out to buy a new device when, you know, I've had parents saying they're going to buy new devices just because they've been having some trouble with it. So I think it's important just to communicate that out, that it's coming, and that way we can make sure that nobody's out spending money when we're so lucky to have a district that provides it.
And then I see in the chat also from Amy, there's a question on, or just a comment on, her student is a remote student and loses their connection to class a number of times each day. You know, I think that you can reach out to the we have a tech help that you can email into. I think some of the times it's trying to make sure also that you're that the student is using the computer close to a router that you have in the house, and potentially and I have this issue with the computer that I'm on tonight, where the router's quite literally 15 feet behind me, but for whatever reason, every time my computer goes to sleep, it goes from my sort of my own personal Wi-Fi band to it sort of resets to the Verizon band, which must be some sort of shared and much narrower. So I've been on Google sessions like this, or Zoom sessions or Google Meet sessions like this, and when it's not on my own band, it ends up cutting out. And I've been on embarrassingly on Google Meet sessions or Zoom sessions where I've lost my connection midway because I forgot to go set the Wi-Fi band to the right one.
I have a question about homework.
Sure, Jackie.
I'm new to the school, and both I have a son in 8th grade and 11th grade, and you have all been so welcoming and wonderful, and the whole process has been amazing. So we're just trying to kind of go with the flow, which I hope most parents are doing as well. But the homework question is, when trying to support and help the kids at home, it's really helpful. In the past, we've used the books to kind of say, let's look at the book, let's do some example problems. And it seems that they said that we're not able to get those books, or they're only online, but sometimes they're hard to download because of some of the restrictions. So can you address that, or where can I come to the school and get them? Can I buy them? I'm not sure what to do there.
Do you know, are there specific classes too that this is in? Oh,
Specific classes that I would like the books for?
Well, just because we do have in some cases some of the texts are purely electronic text.
Okay. So I could have my students ask the teacher if it's okay to borrow a book for the semester.
Jen, you want to jump in and?
Hello there. So just a quick question about textbooks and students that are learning from home. So for the most part, we certainly have enough to be sent home. If your student is a 100% remote student, some of the challenges are that we do have class sets, but we can provide that for you as long as you give us enough notice so we can prepare it. And as far as the electronic texts go, we can actually put that into a PDF and print it out for you. But again, it is going to take time. So my recommendation is that you work with your child's counselor. I think it's probably Mrs. Ginnity and Miss Hall, and they can put together materials for you that can be sent home. That's
okay.
Yep, that's an easy fix.
Okay. And then one other question: have you guys? I know we're still this is all very new, but have you given some thought to some sort of social time or clubs and kind of outside activities? Just because again, we're new, but that's such a big part of their school. I don't know if there's plans on how to do that or what you guys are thinking.
So right now, all of our clubs are being offered in a remote setting, and I think that we're still in a position, and where we have to caution against gathering. I think there's no surprise that we've already been through our first positive case, and we want to try to avoid that. So right now, all of our clubs are still being offered, but they are being offered in a remote setting, at least until we are in a position, that it looks like the data is trending in the right direction. But right now it is completely virtual.
Thank you.
And I see in the chat from Rebecca, you have a question about the daily COVID check-in for high school sports participation.
Yeah, I was just curious as to what the exact timeline is. And I only just speak, like I know my son, one of my sons is trying out for soccer, and he said today he had heard, or there was an email announcement from the athletic director about, making sure you sign in, and he went to go sign in and he couldn't. So he basically got a text from the coach that he wasn't allowed to go to practice today. So I just wanted to get clarification on exactly like what is the deadline that the students have to do their check-ins. I mean, it just slipped his mind today. He's usually been good. So I just trying to understand it so that when this happens again, I can explain it to him, like when these check-ins need to be completed by, is there a certain time, or how they work.
Jen, do you know the exact time on that?
I know that they obviously need it before practice starts, but I'm hearing what you're saying, that we are putting a lot of responsibility on our students to remember to do that. So I think what I'll do is I will meet with our athletic director and see if we can send out almost a daily reminder to our students, like our fall athletes, just so they are getting in the habit of filling that out.
Could it be done in the morning?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because he said he tried to log in at like 2:02 and he got kicked out. And then, but he said he was really upset because like he called me to come pick him up because he said his coach was like, even though he's been at school, he was at practice yesterday, but like the coach pretty much was like, nope, sorry, can't come.
So I'm thinking that we need to figure out like a paper option for kids that either they can't access it or they're bumped out or what, we are relying on technology and it's not always reliable. So I think maybe if we have the coaches have a backup to that, which maybe it's a paper screening that the kids can fill out.
Or even till the end of the day or something. Like he was not happy when I picked him up.
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Rebecca, I believe it opens at 7 in the morning and closes at 2. So they can do it anytime during the day. I told my kids to do it at lunchtime when they have a minute, just so they don't forget and miss that 2 o'clock cutoff.
I think he has other times. It was just, I think today was one of these days where he had so much else going on. I think he thought he did it. Then he saw Karen's email or something. So he went to do it. Like I said, it was not pretty when I picked him up at the school, when he called me and he was really upset that he wasn't able to go to the practice. So I just am trying to understand it from my perspective as well.
Well, Rebecca, I feel your pain because we may have passed at the high school because my foster daughter forgot to turn it in today as well. So I had to pick her up instead of having her do cross country today. So I think Amy Sullivan put, I think, a nice idea in the chat of just suggesting that maybe if we encourage our kids to to set an alarm, either to do it every day before they're heading out the door or every day at lunch. But I think just
we're doing breakfast at our house. I told Noah we'll just make it a breakfast thing, but it just like I said, literally it was like 2:02 he said, and he couldn't get in, and so I just wanted to understand it from my from the school side as well, not just listening to him ranting and raving because he wasn't able to go to his practice.
So the next question, there's in the chat, I see there's somebody's asking how many open spots are available to attend school in person. I know of students that have enrolled after the deadline and are physically attending classes. So what I have asked the principals to do is if there are individuals who want to do in-person learning and there is space, we'll take kids and fit them into the spaces or the classrooms that we have, as long as we can make sure that we're maintaining 6-foot spacing in classrooms. And if we run out of spaces, we have families would be put on wait lists for spots. And if we have families that shift from in-person to distance learning, we can go and come up with sort of a one-for-one swap on that. But I know there are, I think there are spaces in some grade levels. I think at the moment, I believe maybe at the high school specifically, the 8th grade is our largest cohort. And I think that was at least at the high school, a grade level that was tightest. I think there are a number of grade levels at the middle school that are pretty tight. And I think there might be some wiggle room in some grade levels at some of the elementary grade levels. So I don't know if there's a specific grade that somebody was asking about that we could maybe chime in.
Mr. Carpenter, it would be 5th grade. I was just wondering about. Actually, I was wondering about all grades because remote learners were never informed that there were these open spaces and that there were accommodations being made. And I'm just curious as to why we were not informed of that when other students that don't really even reside in our school district are being able to come to school.
Well, I think there are families that have registered with us that whether they're here for the long haul is yet to be seen, but they're at least physically living in Chatham or Harwich. We haven't taken in school choice students since prior to registering for in-person or distance learning.
How long ahead do they have to register in order for their child to come to school?
Technically, if you are a property owner and have a home in Harwich or Chatham and say that you are now opting to live in that home instead of wherever you have been living, and we don't have a lot of individuals like that, but we have some. I think that we've seen the district grow in terms of families by just over a dozen individuals sort of fall in that category.
So when you register, is there a time limit from when you register for when you can attend school?
So no, if someone were to show up tomorrow, we would have to go and accommodate them either in person or distance learning.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Hi, this is Heather DeVoe. I have 2 little ones at the elementary school that are doing remote learning, 1st and 2nd grade. And I had 2 questions. One was with regards to attendance policy. It seems as though the teachers aren't 100% clear on, if you have a doctor's appointment or dentist appointment, things like that, do you need to send in notes? Like how many absences are they allowed? Are they expected to, go to school when they're not feeling great, but, or it's different because we're at home. So, if you have the sniffles and you don't want to go to school, it's a little different than when you just are sitting in front of a screen. So I just didn't know what that policy was or if it's been figured out yet. And then totally separate, the other piece of my question was with regards to remote learning. I understand in the the guidelines, there's a portion that says parents like to respect the privacy of the children that are participating in the remote learning. They're supposed to be alone in the room, and one of our teachers has sent out a couple emails just kind of reminding us that she is the teacher. If they need assistance, she's there to help, and she's wonderful. She's absolutely a great teacher and she's doing a great job of it. But for 1st and 2nd graders, they need help with just even staying focused and being reminded to, stay in one spot. And pay attention to what's going on. And then even just with the independent learning that they're doing, again, we're being told that this is really supposed to be being done on their own, but so much of the computer work, they just don't know how to navigate through these programs. So it's been a little bit challenging. And I feel like, almost like I'm having to hide in the corner of the room because I want to be there to help and support, but we're kind of being told that we're really not supposed to. And that's not obviously very different than how remote was in the spring, and not really what we anticipated going into remote learning with that regard.
Yes, so let me first talk to the attendance, and then we can get sort of talk philosophically about what remote learning looks like if you're a parent at home, which I think I feel for you. Yeah, I can imagine what it's like for a first and second grader, so we'll get to that. Just in terms of attendance, I think Heather has a unique situation in that her children are purely distance learners. What our party line is for families and staff, for our students and staff this year is, if you're feeling in the least a bit sick, if you're having allergy symptoms but tend to not have regular allergy issues, stay home just in case, and to communicate with the school, with the school nurses and your primary care physician. And that's I think one of the key things we all have to do to protect ourselves and to protect others. So I think the question is there a attendance policy that the district has? What we try to do as a district is, if your student's not going to be in class, either if it's a distance learning class or if it's in-person learning, you can still contact the school's attendance line, and we can go and keep an accurate attendance for them. We definitely if there are issues where where a student is not in class for a number of days, and we don't have any communication back from our nurses, I think that's when you're likely to hear from one of the principals, saying, hey, what's going on? But again, I think we all have to be lenient in terms of how many days people might be missing. Again, both in terms of our staff and our students, because there are times this year in particular that we're encouraging people to not be in school or not be at work. And I know I had mentioned this to our own staff. I think for me, when I was growing up, I was so proud because I think from kindergarten through, I think it was 8th grade, I had never missed a day of school, and I had all these perfect attendance things framed in my room. And as an administrator, there have been times I've had minor operations and just been in the office the following day. Probably not a wise thing either. And I think now, I'm having to tell myself and keep reminding others that that this is not the year to say it's just a little cough, or I've got I'm feeling just a little bit sick. Those are times that this year in particular we have to go and stay home to protect others.
The attendance line that you were talking about, is that pickup patrol, or what is? When we had to miss a couple of days, and we sent an email to the teacher, and she said, "Did you let the school know?" And I said, "I thought that I did that by letting you know."
So which building is it? Harwich Elementary or Chatham?
So we live in Chatham, but our teachers are from Harwich.
All right. So Mary, when folks call into the elementary school.
So for absences, you can call into the sick line into Chatham Elementary, whatever is the homeschool for your child. And if there's a dismissal, if the student does not return to class, the teacher will notify the office of that.
Okay,
Or you
so
can-
I've never used a sick line before. We've only done pickup patrol if we had to, dismiss them earlier if they're coming in late for a doctor's appointment or something.
Right. So for Chatham Elementary may have a different process for late arrivals. But if your child's sick, you can always call the nurses line through the main office.
Okay.
Or send an email to the office or to the teacher. And if you're planning on your child being dismissed, you can put that into pickup patrol or let your teacher know as well. And we have had the situation where a student just has not returned to class without any notification. And in that case, the teacher lets the school office know whether the child's from Harwich or from Chatham. And then it's recorded in Aspen.
Gotcha.
And then Mary, do you have suggestions for Heather on how to navigate the very young children and distance learning?
Yeah, so, Heather, I understand what you're saying because developmentally the children absolutely need technical support. I think what the teachers are looking for is for the children to be independent with their responses to learning, that they're getting authentic, responses from the children that reflect their understanding. And absolutely, we have preschoolers online who absolutely need their parents' support, and that's just, part of, unfortunately, the way that distance learning works with our younger kids. So I'm sure the teachers appreciate your help with the technology and with the children's responses to the class discussions or with their schoolwork. And just like as in the pre-COVID years, as we would have had advised parents with homework help. If your child's struggling, please let us know. But the teacher needs to know what they're struggling with so we can identify where they need support.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. My daughter was receiving interventions for both reading and math. So a lot of what they're doing in the class and remotely has been challenging for her. So I feel like sometimes she's just sitting there lost and she's not one to be like, hey, I need help. She's, pretty quiet and kept to herself, and she's doesn't cause any disturbances in the classroom. And every time I say, ask your teacher, she looks at me like, no. So
right.
I feel torn because I don't want to not support her, but at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm overstepping.
Right. And I can totally understand. I appreciate the situation you're in. Right now in the elementary schools, we're just starting our assessment cycle with our students, and it's something that has been designed over the summertime to address where students need support in general, but also in light of COVID slide or COVID slide down, whatever phrase you want to use that's been coined recently for that. But based upon those assessments, we're doing them in English language arts, we're doing them in math, we're doing, in reading and writing. The teacher will be able to provide support to your daughter more specifically to where she is, and we're calling that just-in-time learning. And that's really when the small group support will really kick in too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Lily, and my son is doing distance learning with Harwich Elementary in first grade. And I want to kind of back up what Heather's saying in the fact that I think our kids are in the same class, but it's nearly impossible for the kids to be doing the schoolwork that they're being asked to without us helping, because half the time the teacher is giving them two short videos to watch that are 3 minutes long and giving them 50-minute block to do it, and with no instruction what to do after that. So they spend 3 minutes watching one video, 3 minutes watching another video, and then they're sitting there for 40 minutes without much instruction. And then on another time, they're trying to she's having them get off the computer as much as possible, but then she gives them a list of like 6 different things that they could be doing, you know, which is free math where they get to choose what kind of math they're doing. But for a first grader, choosing what kind of math they want to do is difficult without having a little bit more instruction. And I don't know if that's going to be, I don't know if, I mean, I understand it's the first couple of weeks, but I just feel like the schedule has been a little bit all over the place. And I can understand that this is new for everyone and everyone's trying to figure out the best way to help the kids with distance learning. But I just feel like it's been very choppy. Some days it goes really smoothly and some days it seems like it's all over the place. And it's hard for these kids to focus when it's a little bit all over the place. And I don't know if that's going to be addressed at all.
Yeah, so Lily, I think what you're experiencing is the teacher trying to or our teachers, not just this teacher, really trying to find the balance between asynchronous work and synchronous learning. And that balance is, you know, something that we're all on a learning curve about. Synchronous learning is when there's direct instruction and the teacher is teaching live to the class. Asynchronous is when the children are doing something independently and then doing some sort of a response or something, some type of evidence to show that they're learning progression. So I think, you know, I will definitely look into that for you, but all of our distance learning teachers are on a learning curve. We've been working on this since last spring. Definitely room for improvement and professional development. And I think I'll definitely take those comments back and work on that with that teacher. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask, just because Dr. Carpenter had just mentioned waiting lists. When we were choosing distance learning, it was discussed in the Zoom meetings with the district that those families that chose distance learning would have the option of switching to in-person learning at the end of the semester, which would be I'm guessing January 25th from the calendar, if I read that correctly. But now we're hearing about waiting lists. Is there a possibility that the kids will not be able to switch to in-person learning at the end of the semester like we were told they would be able to?
No, we'll go put something out at the end of the semester or just before the end of the semester, and we'll go reshuffle staffing as needed then. So, you know, we'll figure out how many individuals want what, and we will set up, I think it'll just be shifting. If there's distance learning folks that want to come in person, we would just need to shift the staffing that's currently allocated for distance learning and set up a physical classroom for this, for the students.
Okay, thank you.
And and just I think just to clarify, just a little thread in the chat. One of the reports that I gave at the school committee meeting, it was about just what the enrollment is this year. I think there's I saw somebody was mentioning that they're seeing all sorts of out-of-state plates in the drop-off lines, and I think that I had gotten a call from one of our community members last week, and they were wanting to know that they had heard that there was this enrollment spike at Monomoy, and what I was sharing with the school committee is I've heard multiple people think that there's a spike, and actually the exact opposite has happened. We're down by almost 100 students this year over last year, and the biggest drop is that there's a number of families that have opted to homeschool during this period of COVID. So so we have upwards of almost 60 families that are opting to homeschool, not to do distance learning and not to do in-person learning, but to do homeschool, and that's offset by about a dozen students that are staying at either grandparents or staying at their their summer home, and staying here. And I think those families, I think it could be a good thing for the Cape if they find that they can work from these homes and stay here year round. It could be good for us and Cape Cod as a whole. But that's not going to go and create a situation where those people are going to cause a wait list that people can't get back into the schools. Just trying to see what else is in the chat, and if anybody else has questions, feel free just to chime in.
I'd like to speak on the remote learning homeschooling situation as well. My daughter is in the kindergarten through the Harwich Elementary. And I just put in the paperwork yesterday for her to go to homeschooling, specifically because we're finding it very difficult to conform to the in-school schedule at home. So that's pretty much the positives. The negatives are outweighing the positives at this point. Yeah. With her, it's difficult for me to spend the whole morning up until the afternoon with her, helping her through the programs and where she's supposed to be and what times, and trying to get the schedule down and the instructions for what she's supposed to be doing, on top of I have 2 other children that needs my attention as well. So my question is there anything that could be done in a hybrid situation where we would prefer to work within the school system and with the school system for her learning and so on, but it's hard to do school at home to that particular schedule. If there was 1 or 2 days I could devote specifically that I could handle and could, make sure I have the kids situated and everything else. And I could spend that whole day with her, specifically making sure that she's not losing her attention span after like 2 hours. So is there anything that can be considered at some point to do like a hybrid with the school?
Yeah, I think by a hybrid to have a couple days a week instead of every day. Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yes, we'd still do the remote, but it would be, it wouldn't be the everyday online type of situation. It would be more of a, okay, Tuesday and Thursday you're online with your class, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mom's teaching you at home type of.
Yeah, I think the logistical challenges that that we'd have there is that we would have to be allocating seats in essentially 2 different classrooms, a virtual classroom and an in-person classroom. So it's not it's not an easy thing for us to go and schedule, because we're stretched thin as it is, trying to have have the kids 6 foot spaced in the building, and to go and space the kids out in virtual classrooms. I saw there was
I can imagine.
Yeah, there was a question that somebody had, where some of the virtual classrooms, depending on the grade level, are larger, and again, that was as we're trying to go and figure out how to go put together class sizes. I kind of have been telling people this year it's like we're operating Harwich Elementary, Chatham Elementary, and then Monomoy Distance Learning Elementary. And when we were having to go come up with some of the, some of this, class sizes. I think, I can't remember if it was kindergarten where we had, we could have one distance learning kindergarten section that was going to be very large, or we could have, and that would allow us to have 2 in-person ones that would be a little smaller than we'd like, but there, the numbers on where people how people signed up didn't break in a way that it was a nice, that there would be about 16, 15 kids in each section. So so the distance learning ones got a little bit larger, in part because if we had to err on what the size of the class was, we were erring for for the in-person learning, again, because we had to make sure that everybody was spaced at 6 feet. Let's see, other things in the chat. Somebody had, have I heard much pushback on flu shots? So the state has mandated that that all students get flu shots by the end of the calendar year. I personally haven't heard pushback on the flu shots. We're offering a flu shot clinic for staff next week, and in conjunction with the town of Harwich that's trying to vaccinate their staff. And again, I think the importance here and why flu shots are being emphasized is that if we can decrease the amount of respiratory illnesses that individuals have as we go into flu season, the hope is that we can keep everybody safer and not have a situation where somebody potentially has the flu and also contracts COVID, which could be a pretty nasty combination. And it also, I think, helps doctors know if you walk in and you're having some sort of cough that, and the doctor asks, well, have you had the flu shot? And you say yes, then they can, hopefully narrow it down and, focus in on COVID if that's what it is quickly. Let's see, someone was asking, will there be a clinic for students and families through the town or school? I don't think we'll have a clinic for flu. I haven't, I'll be working with both town health departments on what options that they're gonna have for folks in the town. And if they do have one that's sort of open to the full town, that we'll go and put it in our newsletters and get it out to people so that families can go that option. Otherwise, I'd suggest over the next couple months, work with your primary care provider to look towards getting the flu shot.
Hey, Scott. There was a question about distance learning class sizes versus in-person model. Here I am again, still haven't showered. So just to answer, follow up on that one, the in-person model and the distance learning model at the middle school has roughly the same amount of students in it, as much as we could do. So the class sizes in person range from 13 is our lowest in grade 6 to 18 in 5th grade and 7th grade. And then our distance learning, I think cap right now is 21. So we did everything to kind of keep that below the 23 number and tried to keep it also consistent with what Dr. Carpenter had said before, as far as having, roughly the same amount of students in both of those populations.
Do we have other questions from the group?
Dr. Carpenter, I'm Holly. We're new to the district. And we were one of the lucky ones at the high school that were in close contact. So my question is, during the close contact situation that occurred at the high school, if that occurs again, will it be handled in the same way? Or have there been some changes due to some difficulties that arose from that? I'll tell you personally, we received a lot of different information. I mean, it took me a couple of days to kind of dig down deep myself to find out the date of contact. So did you learn anything that might change the process next time, or is it going to stay the same?
Sure. I think it's a good question. And I know that Jen Police, the principal, and I have talked. I was also on a phone call earlier today with the Visiting Nurse Association, which is the contact tracers for the area, our school nurse at the high school, and the directors of the health departments in both Chatham and Harwich. So we had sort of a larger powwow debriefing the high school incident, because the high school, the high school is the most challenging school for this to happen at, because if it's at an elementary school, it's largely going to be one classroom, one teacher, maybe a teaching assistant, maybe a bus, but it's a fairly small thing where there's not a rotating schedule. There's not 6 different classes that the kids are taking. I think I think sort of ahas that we had after the fact, and Jen knows this, is that we initially, when we were communicating out, said we have this magic day that everyone can come back, and that's going to be this Friday. And then we start to realize, oh, some of these students overlapped with the person that was that was positive on, let's say, a Monday, and some on a Wednesday. So we ended up having to take the initial list of all the people we contacted and break it up to this group can come back on such and such a day, and this group can come back on such and such a day. So realistically, I would say this: if this were to happen tonight at the high school, and I don't want to jinx this, Jen, I think what we'll have to do is a very similar communication. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear on some level, and leave it and communicate out that we will be back in touch on the exact day that students will be back, because there is this speed that's really important here. And what was really important for Jen and I, because we got this call or email that came in Friday evening, and I'm in this panic to make sure that we're doing our best to communicate out to whoever needs to know by, and it was late Friday evening, so trying to communicate out to everybody who needs to know before people head off to sports on Saturday and sleepovers on Saturday, and that we try to wrap our arms around it so that we're not seeing a spread happen within the high school population. So I think and that was one of the things that the visiting nurses that are the contact tracers were sort of applauding Jen and I in our approach here, is that before the contact tracers for the area could even jump on this, we had actually already done the contact tracing. Jen had a Google Meet session with the family and the student, identified everybody who we were most concerned about, and we had launched nurses to have those phone calls early on, and then we're communicating out beyond that group to this next layer, which were the students that were in the classroom who were likely further away, likely to have a much less chance of having contracted anything. But again, we're just trying to have our approach be out of an abundance of caution, quarantining a whole classroom. And it's the way the CDC does these close contacts, the definition is that you're within 6 feet for 15 minutes. Well, somebody, let's say, is 15 feet away in a classroom, but they're there for 3 days a week for over an hour at a time. So we want to make sure that we're including them in the group that's getting quarantined. So I think a lot of our approach will be, I think, very similar. I think we have to be a little clearer that particularly at the high school, that we're going to have to get back to you on the exact day when everybody's going to be coming back. But there's still going to be this need to quarantine for 14 days, and to have that happen, have that quarantine, and to get people going into that quarantine as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I want you to know I'm not being critical. I will tell you a piece of constructive criticism that I learned is when I got the call on Saturday, I know it's because you guys were getting the information out as quickly as possible, which I appreciated, my extended family appreciated. But then I had to follow the VNA and kind of work through the process. So, and your email that went out to the rest of the school was great, because I have smaller children. I didn't know what to do with them. But for me, if I had just if there had been a script to read, I don't know. I just not knowing when my daughter had been in close contact was hard, especially with the rest of the children. And so that's just my only piece. I think you guys did a great job.
And I think some of the challenges there, and you can understand this, is we can't go and say, here's the individual, so that you can go and say, hey, when was the last time you sat next to Jimmy? And so there's a little challenge in getting that sort of out as best you can, while trying to protect everybody's confidentiality. One of the lessons I also want to say that we'll be doing differently, should we have to do this again, is the folks that were the close contacts that were in that adjacent student or people in a carpool, they got a phone call and an email. The next layer got an email, and we probably should have done a phone blast on them as well. And I think we also needed to triage the list to see, do we have any individuals in this list who have a household that English isn't the first language, so that we're getting the message out that needs to get out as best we can. So so those were some of the lessons learned in this. But knock on wood, it seems that by Friday we will not only be the first district in the state to have a COVID positive student, but the first district in the state to have everybody back in school. So those are the positive things to look at.
On that note, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
On that note, we have an 8th grader as part of the quarantine, and we really haven't received any other communication other than the initial email. And her teachers were not aware that she'd be home. She was only shared a Latin class, so her teachers, other than her Latin teacher, were not quarantined. So her teachers that were teaching live the past 2 weeks were unaware that she'd be home, even though the email initially said they would be made aware. And then, so this is the first we're hearing. I guess we're allowed to come back after this week. Do we have to be tested? We haven't received anything since the initial email. So.
Yes. So if you had a student who was in that sort of close proximity, our nurses would have called saying you should be tested, or sorry, not you, but your student should be tested. But if you haven't had that phone call, then just quarantining was all that was required.
And just as a follow-up to that, so we have an 8th grader and a 10th grader at the high school. And the 8th grader only was in school for 3 days and now has been out, which unavoidable, but it's been a tremendous struggle for our family. Because we weren't anticipating doing virtual learning, obviously, and we both work full-time outside of the home. So we are struggling more than we probably would have been had both kids been allowed to be in school this week and last week. But we, I guess, just need a little feedback on who we can reach out to at the high school, other than just the teachers, because we feel like they have enough on their plates, and to email 6 teachers every day and 7 for another with questions for issues we're having on trying to manage homeschooling while we're not home. I don't even know where my question should go. I emailed the school counselors and didn't really get the feedback or any feedback that we were hoping to get. So I guess I need to know what the roles are of the people at the high school for assistance. Who are our best resources? If we're parents that are struggling and need some help and insight, do we reach out to a school counselor? Do we reach out to a school psychologist? Do we reach out to one of the administrators? Do we keep emailing 6 to 12 emails a night to the teachers? We want to know that we're trying to help our kids and try to do this better, but we don't know where our resources are. We don't know how to use the technology with Aspen and Google. Our kids are not doing well. We're already 3 weeks behind, and we thought emailing the school counselors, we would get a little more support, or at least this is who can help you. And we can't be calling a school administrator at 8 o'clock at night when we get home from work. So is there going to be a high school feedback summit or something to help parents, or is there somebody within the school system to help parents that are struggling and needing a go-to person?
Yep. All right, so let me just jump in on this quickly. So just to back up to your first point, which I think you said that your 8th grader was just in Latin. So yeah, it took probably 2 to 3 days just to sort out. It ended up somewhere around 73 students total, and they all rotate differently with the cohorts. And it took about 3 days to sort out the return dates based on the date of last contact with the infected individual. So it took about 3 days to sort that out. However, I will say this, that there was an email that was sent out to the faculty that had all of the students that were quarantined. It had their names on a list for exactly the point that you were making, as well as the adjusted return dates. So that information was provided. It took several days to sort it out. And then the second piece of that is, I guess I'm surprised to hear that you didn't feel that the counselors were as supportive as you would have liked, because that would have been my first response is to go directly to the counselor, because that's your child's case manager for 5 years. And that person has daily contact with every staff member in the building and can navigate some of this stuff for you during the school day, and just be that middle person. And I was a guidance counselor for a long time, and prior to this role, so I do take that information seriously, and we will certainly try to mitigate some of those issues. So thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. I just didn't know if they're more academic counseling, like college, pick your classes, let's help you plan for college.
No, it is a wide spectrum as far as, the role that they serve in your child's life. So I will follow up on that with you.
We had one that didn't reply at all, but she is quarantined. And then the one that did reply just basically said there are a lot of patients struggling right now.
Yep.
Or a lot of parents struggling right now. Just keep reaching out to the teachers, which, okay, I don't know. I just feel like we need more than that.
I agree with you. And I think that if you can just work with one person to be sort of the central point person, which is your child's counselor, that should be the role. So you were right to think that. And, you did say, like, you don't feel like like you can, or that you should reach out to the administration, but you can email me anytime. And you know, most people that know me well know that I do respond quickly. So feel free.
Thanks, Jen.
You got it.
Do we have other questions?
I had a question.
Hey, Jill.
Hi. So Max is in 8th grade this year. Just something that's somewhat different because he's at a new school. As I know last year at the end of the year, you know, he usually went early in the morning and got some extra math help. So he knew all the teachers by 7th grade, so kind of set up his own Google Meets and had extra help throughout with the remote learning and did wonderfully. So far things are going great, but he was looking for extra help. And instead of just kind of focusing on his current teacher, is there kind of a setup of people who are available in certain times, that kind of thing at the high school?
So let me just jump in on this for you. So, you know, one of the reasons why we, so one of the many reasons why we have the delayed start for students is so that our teachers can provide some of that support in the morning. Unfortunately, we are in a position where it is remote right now. You know, I can say this, you know, and I hope that we can move in a direction where if things continue to go successfully, that we can start to open the high school earlier and offer some of that type of support in a face-to-face format. We're not quite there yet. And I think that this last positive case speaks to that. And I think we really have to caution on how quickly we move to expand the school day, if we can at all. But our teachers do have time in the morning that is dedicated for their own professional development, because, you know, the high school is set up very, very differently, because they are essentially doing two things at one time, and they are navigating the students in front of them as well as the group that's at home. And, you know, we don't have designated remote teachers. So some of that time in the morning is for our teachers to access some professional development on live streaming instruction, which is very, very different, as well as, you know, provide some of that outreach for students. So, you know, I think that the quick answer is I would try to set something up with an individual teacher and go through your counselor and let them help you navigate that. And then I would say just, you know, try to pay attention to any of our communications that come out regarding the possibility of expanding the school day when we can in a safe manner.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Scott, there was a question further up in the chat that I just want to make sure doesn't get lost. And I think we may need more information on the grade level, but it's from Sue, and it says if we have a person, an in-person student homesick, allergies, or a sibling home because of close contact, therefore their class is not going remote, would they have the options to have remote learning at this time from their teacher, or would they join a different virtual class?
So again, so if somebody is quarantined at home, if they're quarantined at home at the high school, they just simply go into the high school classrooms as the same way they would on the days that they're off. On the middle school and elementary school, the classroom teacher will work with them on the curriculum that is happening, going on at the middle school level or at the elementary level. So they wouldn't shift into a remote classroom, because the remote classroom may be doing something that's sort of completely different or on a different timeline than what the in-person classes are going on. So, so if they're having to quarantine, their classroom teachers would be sharing, sharing information with the student at home. Any others? So I guess I'll just wrap up with let's see, the question is there a plan to catch up students that, is it at the middle school level who don't have Spanish as distance learners? Adam, do you want to chime in on what that one might be?
Yeah, I mean, it's not limited to Spanish, and part of at the beginning of this, we've made it pretty clear over the course of the summer that the offerings for the Unified Arts offerings wouldn't be to the same extent as they are in the in-person model, and it's one of those things that we want to build in, and so I know Dr. Carpenter mentioned earlier that we will be kind of determining who's coming back shortly and kind of putting that out there to figure out who's going to be here and who's not for the remainder of the year. And that all information will help us build the schedule for the second half of the year. There's other areas like health that are currently not in the distance learning schedule that would, Latin is another one, physical education. There's a lot that's not part of the distance learning model that we'd love to incorporate and make sure our kids have. The way we're looking at it is, instead of it just being a year at a time, we're looking at it from the perspective of middle school as a 3-year span, and how can we make sure that our kids have over the course of those 3 years, those experiences that will prepare them for the high school. And that includes world languages is tied tightly into that.
Other,
I'm sorry.
I was
So
just gonna, sorry, go ahead.
I understand that you want them to leave middle school with a certain level of education, which is built into those 3 years. So how are we going to catch up? I mean, specifically, how are we going to do this is my question. Is there a plan for it, or are we just not going to address it?
You broke up there a little bit at the end, but I think if I can just add just one piece specifically to the Spanish piece, our middle school program for language is an exploratory program. It doesn't really build towards a proficiency level, especially the way it's been historically scheduled. It's on a quarter system. It's really meant to be an exploratory. We don't really have any students, or I shouldn't say any. It's a very, 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 very small percentage of students move into either a second level going into the 8th grade from our middle school, and it's usually in Latin. So it is, students do have an option to take this sort of placement test, but the model is not designed to be, complete Spanish 1 by the end of the year, just because some students might take it, even under the previous schedule, might take it in the fall of their 5th grade year and then don't have it again until the spring of their 6th grade year. That it isn't set up in a way to build continuity. It is designed to be an exploratory program. So that specifically is much easier to catch up in looking at a high school, or looking at the school, like Mr. O'Shea said, over 3 years.
Okay, so it's not the things that the distance learning kids are missing is not considered cumulative. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then it's a strong focus on the academic core to ensure that kids are able to move forward with the 4 main core content areas: English, science, math, and social studies.
Okay, so like health, Latin, Spanish, those missing this portion
they're not missing anything that they're going to need next semester or in 7th or 8th grade. Is that correct? I'm just.
Yeah, and that's where we're ideally, certainly it's not an ideal time, and the
No, of course
design,
not.
the design is messy compared to where it's been in the past, where everyone was on the same track, and we could easily say, okay, this child's in first Spanish 1 and this child's in Spanish 2, and you kind of track where they're at. So like I said, we have to get creative with the planning, and it is, as Mark mentioned, we're looking at the core content, and then making sure that a lot of the skills, especially what we identified as areas of deficiency with ELA math and reading and writing, math and science, are being addressed, and that we have ample time to make sure that we're addressing those, and then building in those other opportunities and looking at it over the course of 3 years. And I can tell you now, it's not going to be solved in 1 year, just the outlook. But like I said, we have to look at it from a 3-year perspective.
Okay, thank you. We have really fantastic distance learning teachers, and we're very pleased with them. We've been a very, very positive experience thus far, but there is always that concern that academically they'll fall behind if they're not offered, what I feel is actually important things like language. But thank you.
I agree with you, and thanks. I'll share that with the team.
All right, last call for questions.
Is there a possibility for like video classes or something to be set up for language and health and the other things that are concerned for distant learners? I mean, I know it's tough, but our kids got shut off March of schooling, and I would love to say, like, the elementary school in Chatham, like, to me, did an amazing job. And there were videos, and they weren't necessarily in class, but they got to learn, and it was there. And I'm just wondering why that can't be provided for our children now.
And this is at middle school?
When we left the elementary school in March, they had gym, they had music, they had art. There were numerous things that, just on their own, that they had to plug into and learn about. There were videos attached to it, and they could participate in the video and watch and then submit their work and to be engaged in the process of learning. So I'm just confused as why now a video or something could not be happening for these children on maybe not a daily basis. I mean, Monomoy Elementary did it on a daily basis, but a weekly basis for these children to participate and get that different type of education.
Yeah, I think at the moment, when we went into distance learning in the spring, all of our staffing was diverted to only distance learning. So we had, we would have had a gym teacher in distance learning or a wellness teacher in distance learning, and a Spanish teacher and everything else. I think the challenge we have now is when we have one Spanish teacher, the Spanish teacher is either over in the in-person learning for this semester or in the distance learning. And I think what Principal O'Shea was saying is that as we get into the next semester, we'll reevaluate what the options are, and potentially be flipping some of those UA classes, the arts, the wellness, the Spanish, and flipping them from one learning type to the other.
And I also, there's another component which is very difficult in middle school. We've prided ourselves on having a lot of choice and a lot of options for kids, and a lot of exploration just in doing things both before and after school. And we've talked about clubs and having those in place. We've had seminars in the past that have been, highly successful, and certainly were a place where kids could go to have interventions and enrichment opportunities. So we encourage you to sit in on school council. We had our first meeting yesterday, and just kind of we talked as a team as far as what we can do as parents, as community members, as administrators, just to help each other out and help our kids out, to make sure that this isn't a lost year and a lost experience. And give them just additional opportunities that are unique to this year, and kind of build a sense of community. And so we're working on those things that we can offer, not just to in-person kids or just distance learning kids, but have some sense of intermingling in a distance learning fashion.
All right, I just want to be mindful of people's time, and we'll just wrap it up here. I'm willing to stay on if people have questions they just want to ask, so I'll stick around. But thanks for showing up this evening, and thank you for for your support. We couldn't have launched this year without the help of parents with transporting students to school, and it's what you're doing on the home end for those that have kids that are distance learning, or even the high school kids on their days that they're at home. We thank you for the support that you're providing to make all of this work at a very challenging time for all. But this too shall pass, just hopefully soon. Anyway, have a great evening. All right, Leah, do you want to shut down the recording and call it a night?
I was just waiting to see if anyone had additional questions, but it looks like everyone's logging off, so. Nancy Blake, do you have any questions? Miss Nancy Scott?
I think she just wanted to hang out with the cool kids.
Just totally kicked her out. Hold on.
Last time she got mad because she wanted to stay and chat afterwards and she got booted.
Well, let me stop the live recording.
Not only were those tomato